From the moment Claire stepped into the warm, softly lit restaurant, she felt the unmistakable tremor of a life about to change. She didn't know how or why, but something in the air felt different, as if the very walls held their breath. She was there for a blind date arranged by a well-meaning coworker, a date she wasn't emotionally ready for but felt obligated to try. What she didn't expect was her 3-year-old daughter, Grace, suddenly tugging free from her hand and sprinting across the room with unshakable certainty, straight toward a man she had never met. And not just any man, but a sharply dressed stranger sitting alone, his posture elegant yet shadowed by an unmistakable loneliness. If you believe in kindness, unexpected miracles, and second chances, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps us bring more real, heart-touching stories to you. Claire's breath caught as she rushed after her daughter, her heels clicking anxiously against the polished floor. Grace, usually shy around strangers, ran straight to the solitary man with a joyful abandon of greeting someone she already knew. The man looked up, startled at first, then softened with an expression that flickered between confusion and something deeply wounded. His blue eyes held a tiredness beneath their sharpness, as if he carried too much for too long. Before Claire could reach them, Grace reached up both hands toward him with innocent expectation, the way she did when she wanted to be picked up. But the man didn't lift her. Instead, he placed a hand gently over his chest and leaned down slightly, as if bracing himself against old memories. Claire apologized profusely, embarrassed and unsure how to pull Grace away without causing a scene. The man only shook his head, offering a small, almost apologetic smile that carried a weight she could feel but not yet understand. The strange thing was, Grace didn't cling. She simply rested her hand on his knee for a quiet moment before allowing Claire to guide her back. As Claire walked away, she felt his gaze lingering. It unsettled her, not in fear, but in a way that made something inside her stir, like a forgotten ember flickering back to life. Her actual blind date, a talkative man named Trevor, arrived 10 minutes late and spent most of the evening talking about himself, punctuating his monologue with glances at his phone. Claire tried to be polite, but her thoughts kept drifting to the man Grace had run to. He had looked familiar, but she couldn't place why. Grace, seated beside her with crayons and paper, kept glancing back at him too, as if drawn by an invisible thread. When Trevor excused himself to take a call, Claire looked up again and saw the man standing to leave. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone used to controlling a room, but there was a loneliness in his steps that contradicted his polished exterior. At the door, he paused and looked back at Grace with a softened expression before disappearing outside. Claire didn't understand why the moment stayed with her long after she returned home. The next morning, she found out exactly why. The mysterious man from the restaurant appeared on the morning news. Jackson Hale, the CEO of Hale Tech, a rising tech conglomerate in Chicago. He was known professionally for transformative leadership and privately for the tragedy he rarely spoke about, the sudden passing of his wife 2 years earlier in a car accident, leaving him to raise their son, Noah, alone. Claire felt a strange ache for him. She knew loss too well. Grace's father had walked out before she was born, leaving Claire to navigate motherhood and survival on her own. Days later, Claire and Grace visited a local park on a sunny Saturday, hoping for a quiet afternoon. But Grace, unpredictable as always, ran ahead, and once again, ran straight toward someone, toward a little boy, toward Noah Hale. He sat at a bench clutching a small toy truck, his face pinched as if he'd been crying. And beside him, looking painfully out of place in a world built for play and innocence, was Jackson Hale. Claire froze. It felt unreal, almost orchestrated by something beyond coincidence. Grace reached Noah and offered him one of her plastic bracelets, a silly pink thing she loved to share only with the people she instantly adored. Noah accepted it shyly. Jackson looked up and recognized Claire immediately. He stood, clearing his throat awkwardly but politely. Claire apologized again, though Jackson insisted it was unnecessary. As the children played, Claire and Jackson sat nearby. They didn't speak much at first. It wasn't silence born of discomfort, but something quieter, two tired souls finding unexpected rest. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentle, grounded, honest. He confessed that Noah rarely connected with other children since the accident. Claire shared that Grace had grown up without a father, and sometimes sensed sadness in others, better than most adults. The conversation stayed with them both long after, and from that day forward, park visits became routine. What began as coincidence grew into intentionality. Some days the children played, some days they cried, some days they simply sat side by side beneath the big oak tree. Claire and Jackson found themselves talking about everything from the struggles of single parenthood to the guilt of moving forward too slowly or too quickly. But neither dared to call it anything more than friendship. They were two people still bandaged in the places life had broken them. Then came the afternoon when Noah fell from the playground slide, scraping his knee and bursting into tears. Jackson rushed toward him, panic swallowing his composure, but Noah reached first for Grace's hand, then for Claire's. Claire knelt and scooped him close, rubbing his back and soothing him with words she used for Grace. Jackson watched in a stunned silence that held more emotion than he had allowed himself in years. For the first time since his wife passed, Noah allowed someone besides his father to comfort him. Jackson thanked her, his voice cracking in a way that made Claire's heart twist. It was then she realized how desperately he'd been carrying everything alone. After that day, Claire felt the shift, subtle but undeniable. Jackson began offering rides. Claire started sharing homemade meals. Their kids grew inseparable. And slowly, the invisible wall between the adults began to thin. He opened up about the loneliness he hid behind his work. She admitted her fear of trusting again. He confessed how often he blamed himself for things he couldn't control. She revealed how often she doubted she was enough for Grace. The feelings grew naturally, quietly, the way dawn grows into morning. But Claire wasn't ready. When Jackson asked if he could take her to dinner, just the two of them, she panicked. It wasn't that she didn't want to. It was the fear of losing something precious if things went wrong. She'd built her life around caution. Jackson had built his around responsibility. What if they cracked the fragile ecosystem that kept their children happy? She told him she needed time. He nodded, hiding the disappointment with practiced elegance. For weeks afterward, Claire wrestled with guilt and yearning. She avoided the park, avoided the emotions she wasn't ready to face. Grace cried for Noah. Noah waited on the bench for a friend who didn't show. Jackson didn't reach out, respecting her space, but she felt his absence everywhere. It wasn't until Grace crawled onto her lap one night and whispered, "Mommy, Noah needs us," that Claire realized something deep and simple. Fear was not a good enough reason to walk away from what felt right. She returned to the park the next morning. Jackson and Noah were there. Noah ran to Grace. Jackson stood slowly, and Claire walked toward him with trembling resolve. She told him she was scared, but she didn't want to run from something that already felt like home. Jackson didn't smile right away. Instead, emotion pooled in his eyes, a vulnerability as real and raw as her own. He stepped forward and rested his forehead lightly against hers, a gesture not of passion but of quiet relief. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't a promise. It was the beginning. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these meaningful stories reach more people. Before we end, I have a special request. Tell us in the comments what moment in the story moved you the most.